Photosynthesis is a very important process for all forms of life because one of the end products is going to be oxygen, which is required for cellular respiration. So if we talk about photosynthesis more, photosynthesis is going to be an anabolic process. And as an anabolic process, we are going to be building molecules, but we will be building carbohydrates. And since this is anabolic and we're building large complex molecules, we're going to require energy. And so we're going to use light energy to do that. So in this case, in this process, we will be actually converting inorganic carbon, which would be carbon dioxide, into an organic form, which will be sugars or carbohydrates. So this is what we call fixing carbon or fixing sugars. And anytime we use that word fixing, we're talking about taking something that's inorganic and turning it into an organic molecule. And just as a refresher, organic molecules are going to have carbon and then also some hydrogen there. The primary organisms that we see performing photosynthesis are going to be plants. We will have some cyanobacteria and a few other protist organisms that would be doing this as well. So let's take a look at the chloroplast because that is going to be our major organelle that's going to be responsible for this process in plants. Here we have a look at a typical chloroplast. Let's go through and review the structures of the chloroplast so that we'll be familiar with them when we start to talk about the individual processes of photosynthesis. We do have 3 total membranes when we're looking at the chloroplast. We have one right here, which is called the outer membrane. There is going to be one just inside that, which is located right here, and this one we call the inner membrane. And then we do have a third membrane, which is located around these discs right here. And we do call the disc thylakoids, so we're going to call the membrane around them the thylakoid membrane. So those are our 3 membranes. If we talk about the actual fluid-filled compartments that we do have 3 of them. We have one right here, which is going to be all this space located between the inner and the outer membrane. That is called the intermembrane space. We have this area here, which is going to be called the stroma. And then we have the area on the very inside of the thylakoids. And we refer to that as either the thylakoid space, or sometimes it's called the lumen. Okay, and both terms would be correct there. So we're going to primarily find chloroplasts located in the leaves of plants. There are going to be a whole bunch of them, and these are where we're actually going to see the photosynthesis process, and we'll have 2 different parts to that photosynthesis process. But both steps will take place in some specific location inside the chloroplast. So if we talk about those 2 halves that we're going to have to photosynthesis, the first part is going to be what we call the light reactions. And the light reactions, their job is to deal with the light. These are very often called the light-dependent reactions because they are reliant on that light energy to occur. These occur in the thylakoids. And so these would be inside those little green discs that you see inside the chloroplast. There are lots of green discs, so there's going to be lots of light reactions taking place. And what the light reactions do is they basically capture light energy and convert that into chemical energy. The second half of photosynthesis is going to be what we call the Calvin cycle, or sometimes this is called the light independent reactions, because the Calvin cycle is not actually going to be the one that is working with the light energy. So in the Calvin cycle, we will use the chemical energy that the light reactions produced. So that's from the light reactions. And we're going to use that to fix the sugars or fix the carbon. So this is going to be the part where we actually make the carbohydrates that we're ultimately interested with this whole process. If we review what overall happens with photosynthesis, first off, light energy is going to come in. So light energy is going to be required for this process. We will have parts of the plant primarily the leaves, that are going to be receiving that light energy. The result of this is that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is going to be absorbed and taken in, and through this process, it is going to be converted into carbohydrates, or we could also call those sugars. Also, we're going to have water, which through this process comes in, and it gets converted into oxygen gas as a byproduct. So if we look at what we start with in this overall process, we are going to start with light energy plus water plus carbon dioxide, and then all of those together we're going to get converted into carbohydrates, and I'm just drawing them generically as CH2O, so that's our generic formula for carbohydrates. Plus we're going to get oxygen gas, which is a very valuable part of the atmosphere. So that is something that would be required for us to survive, because we need that for cellular respiration. So this is the big picture that we're looking at when we do talk about photosynthesis.